What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. I know it's been a while since I posted a video, since I last uploaded, but it's been a busy past couple months. So basically in October, I started my master's degree, and it's been going well so far. Up until a certain point, but I finally got over it, and I'm glad. But was pretty much me about to rant, right? So I'm currently attending WGU, Western Governors University, and I am specializing in a master's degree in cybersecurity and information assurance, which is pretty much a continuation of my bachelor's, right? Just figured, I have some VA benefits. Why not just just use it up? But yeah, man, it's WGU as a school isn't too bad. It's pretty good. I like the self-paced learning and stuff like that. It's different, but it's also pretty flexible for me. But there's this one complaint that I have about it, and it's kind of like the examinations that they choose to give you, or certificates that they choose to have you pass in order to pass certain classes. So at least in my program, you either have classes that are passes or fails. So you do certain assignments in a certain allotted amount of time, and if you complete it and it's a pass, you pass that class, right? So a lot of people, if they have certs beforehand, they'll be able to pass a class. However, if you don't have that particular cert, you will have to do that cert and pass it to pass that class. And unfortunately, I had to do penetration test or pen test plus from CompTIA to pass penetration testing, one of my courses. And man, that was the worst testing experience I've ever had in my life. And this is coming from someone who is a CISSP. So, going in, I didn't really have an idea. Well, I wouldn't say I didn't have an idea, but I wasn't, I guess you would say, knowledgeable of the extent of, if you don't, well, basically, let me just clarify it better. So most classes that have certs, from what I understand, is that at the end of the class, you can get a voucher to do a cert if you want to, kind of deal. But there are certain classes, as I mentioned before, that you have to pass that exam, that certification exam, to pass a class, pen test being one of them. So that's out of the way, right? WGU requires it for some reason. I already kind of have animosity towards CompTIA already, but whatever, right? I think the last exam I did for CompTIA was CISA Plus, and it wasn't too bad. But anyways, to the meat and potatoes, why I say that pen test is the worst examination I've done so far. So I find out I'm doing pen tests, and even from before when I was doing CISA, because I was thinking of doing both of them, I heard that pen test was like, had to do a lot of coding and it was more technical and hands-on, and I'm more of a theory guy. So I was like, I don't really need it. And the job that I'm in, I don't really need it. But, I find myself doing this course and they're like, hey, you got to pass this to, pass the class. So I'm like, okay. So I get into the meat and potatoes of it. So the class gives you this free link to CertMaster. I think CertMaster, from what I understand, is kind of like CompTIA's e-learning resource. It was garbage, in my opinion, right? It didn't really teach you anything, and it was god-awful boring. I got Dion's class on Udemy, which was decent, especially on the go, right? It kind of like breaks it down to you easier. And then I also got a Cybex book, both digitally on my Kindle and the actual textbook, because I'm more old school. So I like reading and studying from a book that I can hold and look at, make my notes, scribble my notes on whatever, on certain passages and stuff that I think are important. So I'm using 3 resources. And this class started from October, and I passed, but barely successfully, but I passed 2 days ago, or no, actually yesterday, right? But before I get to that point. So between October and now, or yesterday, I'm studying all the time I have. Like wherever I'm going, I have a book, I'm watching a video, I'm using my Kindle, I'm studying, right? So to the pen test exam itself, right? So pen test, from what I remember, it consists of planning and scoping, vulnerability scanning, and vulnerability scanning, and I forgot the other one already. Then you have attacking and exploitation, then reporting. You're reporting the pretty much your findings, and then the tools and scripting and code analysis, I think, right? I know it's bad. I just finished a test yesterday and I don't remember the sections, but that's pretty much a gist of it. And for those of you who don't know, pen testing or ethical hacking, which is what part of pen testing, ethical hacking, is just pretty much, a hacker that isn't doing it for nefarious means, but it's needed. But a hacker is needed to kind of like make sure that the defenses that the blue team, because hacking or that pen testing is more the red team, you have red team, blue team, but hacking ensures that if I have a cyber defense, that it's sturdy enough to keep a particular organization's IT network secure, right? Because you can have defenses build up all you want and you think it's good, but you might overlook a vulnerability. So it's kind of thinking as how an enemy would think, right? So a lot of big corporations, especially, they will hire pen testers or ethical hackers to do runs, but it's within means, right? Like, in the whole material, you learn that, as a pen tester, you have to sign documents and contracts to say, hey, these are parameters that you need to be within, the timelines, what you can and cannot scan, based on certain laws and regulations. And when you do your scans, you pretty much write down a report and you bring it up to the people in charge, and then they'll make their determinations after that. But that's pretty much in a nutshell what a pen tester does, right? But I'm all over the place, sorry about that. Well, back to the test, right? So overall, the material isn't bad per se, more so because I have already experience and I have a cybersecurity background, so it wasn't too bad to digest the material. I think the harder parts to digest was more on the technical side, because you have to learn a myriad of tools like Ettercap, Frida, OAuth, Nmap is a big one, Metasploit. And for those of you who are familiar in that field, you kind of know those tools that I'm talking about, right? And the same mode, like, you got to know different vulnerabilities and attacks like cross-site scripting, cross-site forgeries, what type of tools can break WPS or WPA2, wireless security, and so on and so forth, right? But the biggest thing the biggest complaint that I had with the exam, right, was you had the basic cybersecurity blue team stuff like, GRC, and then you had the red team stuff where you had to learn about the tools, the different vulnerabilities, and the frameworks, right, to exploit systems and stuff. But then you had scripting, right? Which is like, okay, you need to know scripting to obviously break certain things in systems, right? In IT systems, right? Because most things they use code, obviously, or you need certain ways to automate certain things, right? So you have to learn 6 languages pretty much, right? You have to learn 6 different scripting languages. I think you have to learn, or I know you have to learn Bash, JavaScript, Perl, Ruby on Rails, Python, and PowerShell. So you have to learn 6 different scripting languages. And I'm telling you, man, if you don't have any sort of background in programming, you're SOL, man. You have to know your programming. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So I'm like, man, I gotta learn like 6 of these. So I pretty much had to learn how all these meshed, how all these looked like, you know, how to make variables in each one's, how the while loops and for loops and object-oriented programming looked like for each of these scripting languages. And it was a lot, because I mean, learning a programming language it's a lot. Plus on top of the red team stuff and the basic cybersecurity knowledge. Even so much so that I remember in one of the Dion videos, Dion was like, oh, it kind of sucks that CompTIA wants you to learn all 6 of these languages, because each language could be a whole series in and of itself. But if you fail the scripting part, you know, as long as you pass the other parts, you should be fine. So I'm like, okay, that's kind of not encouraging, but all right. So I focus on, because obviously the bulk of the material is attacking and exploiting and vulnerability scanning, right? So pretty much in the whole timeline, I forgot to mention this, but the whole timeline of penetration testing is that you plan with the people that you're working with, the organization, the people who run the organization that you're about to pen test. You work with them, you set up contracts, you set up I forgot the words, I forgot the terms, but like I can't believe I brain dumped everything. But let's call it, for lack of a better word, contracts of outlining what your parameters of work are going to be, your legalities of it, make sure you have authorization to do everything, like what you're going to scan, all that other stuff. And then you do what you call enumeration, so, and fingerprinting and footprinting. So you're making sure you're mapping out where you're going to penetrate, and what places are open and vulnerable and stuff like that. So you do your passive reconnaissance and your active reconnaissance, and then you go into your attack stage where you actually deliver whatever exploit you're doing. And then when the exploit succeeds, you go into like persistence. So you set up, like, you know, like Trojans and not Trojans, but backdoors and reverse shells and stuff to pilfer information or simulate pilfering information, or to kind of like say that, hey, this is a possibility. And then from there you can pivot from like one server or network node to another one. And then basically after, and this is all like theoretical, because you're not supposed to do this because you can go to jail, especially if you're doing it without permission or using certain tools, even if you have permission, but that's another thing. And then after you do all your exploitation, then you write the reports and give it up to whoever needs to see it, right? So that's pretty much the timeline of it, right? In a nutshell, for the most part, right? So I do all of that. I study all of that, and then I focus on the tools for attacks and exploitations and the tools I need for vulnerability scanning, because those are the 2 most important parts of pen testing. You got to know what you're looking for in terms of looking for vulnerabilities, and you got to know how to attack and exploit it, obviously, right? And then I do I study the scripting part, because a lot of it I didn't know or wasn't experienced with, because I've only had background with JavaScript and Python and PowerShell. But yeah, so I was like, okay. So I go into the test, and before I even go into the testing part, I go all over Reddit, all over the internet, and everyone is saying that pen test is the hardest test they ever took. It's harder than CASP. Like multiple people, I'm talking about people with years of experience saying that the test is hard. It's a tough one. I even had people in my workplace saying that, oh, they failed pen test 2-3 times and they passed it in the third time. And I'm like, man, this is going to suck. But I was like, okay, I prepared for 3 months. I should be okay. Maybe they're over exaggerating. Maybe it isn't so bad. Man, I tell you, I sit in that test, man. And the very first question is legit, is pretty much a script that you can tell that is not a beginner level script. I don't want to give out too much information, test compromise, but it's pretty much like something that, I mean, granted, the CompTIA does say people who take the test need to have like 3 to 5 years of experience in pen testing. But come on, most people who are taking pen tests, who are actual pen testers, aren't taking pen tests, 1. And 2, like, come on, man. Like, a whole script, like long script, the first, like, you know, problem-based question, like crazy. So I'm already like, man, I'm gonna fail this. And then the test was just like, a lot of the questions, just to keep it short, were a lot of coding questions, a lot of things. And then just in general, there's just a lot of things that the test covered that weren't really hit on in the material. I mean, granted, there were a lot of questions on what tool does this, or Nmap is a big thing, right? Nmap is a vulnerability, not a vulnerability scanner. It's a scanner. I would say it's not really a scanner. Sorry. Nmap is pretty much like an enumeration, I would say, tool. More so, it's a little bit more than a scanner. It's like an enumeration tool, and it's very important. So you have to know all the flags and what the flags mean and stuff like that. So yeah, you did have those in there. Nmap, a lot of Nmap flags. You did have a lot of like what this tool does, or in this case, what tool would you use to exploit this and whatever. But there was also a lot of coding, more so than the test would let you believe. So it's sufficing to say that it sucked, and I was like tilted. I barely passed. I think I got like a 756 out of 750 minimum. So I barely scraped by. As a matter of fact, the first question with the script, I skipped over because it already demoralized me. So I didn't notice, because it was like one of those questions where like you had a little bubble and he took it from one side and he put it to the other to put it in order, what the script would look like. But I didn't notice that you could scroll down and there was more options. I thought there were only 4, but there were like more options. So I flagged it, and then when I finished the test, I went back to it and realized it. And I was able to, because at first I was like, man, screw it, whatever, I failed. But then I went back to it and I fixed my first answer. And I think if I didn't go back, I would have 100% failed that. But yeah, I think maybe I'm just salty because of the nature of the test. I definitely think when they say you need 3 to 5 years of pen test experience, you definitely need 3 to 5 years of pen testing experience for that test, because it's a doozy. It's just a really brutal test. It's something that you should definitely not underestimate in terms of difficulty. I think in my opinion, I think it was harder than CSSP. CSSP is more so like a mental game, because CSSP, I knew the information, but it was just a matter of getting into that manager or management mindset. Whereas pen test was just hard. It was just a hard test, because I had to lean heavy into my experience and common sense and my coding experience, and my experience looking at logs and website requests and stuff like that. I think that tests can be better written, for sure. But yeah, tips, if you haven't kind of picked it out already, tips to pass that exam if you're, for whatever reason you're doing that exam, unfortunately, is that definitely know Nmap like the back of your hand, know all the tools like the back of your hand, know the flow of pen testing. Depending on what your level of cybersecurity is, know the basics, know the contracts, even though I completely brain dumped them, like SOW and NDAs and stuff like that. Definitely know your coding. I would say if you know zero about programming, pick a language, or pick a language among the 6 that I mentioned. That's Perl, Bash, PowerShell, Ruby on Rails, JavaScript. I would say pick more so the languages, like, so Ruby, I'm not sure if Perl is a scripting language or whatever, but I would say pick like JavaScript or Python, work on those and kind of have a good grasp on them, and then look into the other ones, so you actually can kind of have that basic programming logic, so you can apply it to all the scripting languages, because you're definitely going to need it. They definitely put a lot more programming questions that they let on. And I would also say make sure you're good on like injections and like website logs and stuff like that, and how they look like command injection stuff like that, because that can sneak up on you too as well. So Nmap, programming, scripting, knowing what to look for in logs, websites and stuff like that, and just basically cover all your bases. But Nmap, knowing how GUIs look like too, and how to interpret GUIs, like from like Nmap and Netcat, and knowing what a reverse shell and a regular shell looks like in terms of like persistence and stuff like that. I would say those are the things that I would harp on in terms of the test. But if you're, unless, other than me who had to do it for the class, for the course, would I recommend pen tests to get into penetration testing? No, I wouldn't. I would probably look into CEH or offensive, I forgot what it's called. I'll leave it in the comments. It starts with I forgot what the name of the certification is called, but I'll edit it. I'll either edit in the video or leave it in the comments. But I will also go to Hack the Box or Try Hack Me and do the courses there if you want to get into pen testing, and go from there instead of doing pen test. Pen test is 100% not worth it. It was a bad time. But that's just my rant. Just wanted to put it out there. That's what I've been doing for the past couple of months. I finally feel free. I kind of don't know what to do with myself because I've been studying nonstop. Anytime I had free time, I was just studying. So yeah, that's update with me. Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. But that's all I have for today. Until next time, peace out.